So Ibrahim, in all this conversation, and really the only question I asked was, who is Ibrahim? And this is Ibrahim, right?
Yeah.
And there was something that just kept running through: relationships. How did you, I just want to understand how you think through relationships in everything that you do. Because from all that you're looking at relationships from present, past, future, just finding the link between objects, between people, you linking economics to labor. There's a whole lot of relationship chains in everything that you're doing. How did you start thinking through things like this?
I think it's paying attention to the things around us. Most often we don't pay attention to things. When an idea comes into someone's mind, most often we dismiss ideas. You know, you don't even want to tell someone about a ridiculous idea that you have. You know, you think that they will make fun of you or they will laugh at you. Oh, I thought about this thing, it seems quite ridiculous. But then it's within that ridicule that sometimes we can make sense of the world, you know. I'm sure when those guys who created like Google and all those things back in the day, a lot of them had to drop out of school because even when you were in school, you couldn't discuss that with some of your colleagues. They'd be like, we are trying to study proper things, you are talking about these funny things. Yeah, but then that's where it comes in, because the whole problem with the world is that we don't pay attention. So when something, that's why I said when something breaks down, that's when we have to take time and then observe. Say that, oh, this thing is not working. Why is it not working the way that it is? How do we solve the problem? How do we expand it? How do we relook at it? So for me, that's where the relationships come in. And then I'm more interested in somehow complicating it further by saying, okay, fine, I've observed that based on the form that this thing takes, I can also relate it to something else. And art is not about making sense. That's why people always say that, oh, but they are making like some senseless things. No, the world is not about sense. If it was about reason, then we shouldn't have any problems in the world. Because we always say that we want to vote for so-called sensible people to lead us. But you realize that the world is a disaster. There's nothing sensible about the world. But then art, that's when art comes in. Art allows us to be able to look deeper into the world and say, okay, indeed, we know that we realize that A, B, C, D, there are problems with it. But then these are also the potentials that exist in it. And that's where the relationships become important.
So you are an artist.
Yeah.
We are insurers and what? and I'm sure when you enter, you're like, okay, this is a corporate institution, and why are we having you here? But there seemed to be, you know, some line of thinking in terms of what you do. And you just mentioned one which talks about attention to details. So this word is always around and we keep hearing it, innovation, innovation, but clearly it didn't start now. I'm sure it's been there from ages. Mm-hmm. And in most times when people are thinking around innovation, they're just thinking about the big things. But here you are using what, cocoa sacks that you will see in our ordinary houses with in the charcoal, mm-hmm. you know, the charcoal bags. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just basically anything that we literally would not pay attention to is what you are seeing to be very valuable and creating these relationships out of it. So how would you encourage people to think beyond this whole big ideas and everything has to be a big bang? Let me put it that way. Because when people are talking about innovation, they're always looking for the big things, right?
Yeah.
And like you're saying, when ideas come up, the fear of it being even shut down, you yourself, you ridicule it and you're asking yourself, does it make sense? And then you just need one or two more people to just, you know,
yes,
validate to say, yes, it's not making sense, and you drop it. But
yeah,
how do you encourage people to just see in an ordinary everyday life that they can actually find solutions in just paying attention to everything that they do on a daily basis?
For me, what I did was that when I was born in Tamale, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Accra. I was only 2 when they brought me to Accra. So it was a very conscious decision to go back to the north, because I could have stayed in Accra or I could have lived anywhere in the world in the beginning of my career. But I decided, why not go to the north? Because I thought, yeah, it's going to be difficult. But then within that difficulty, there are so many things that you're going to discover, you know. Nothing starts big. You start something small. If I show you a picture of the studio, Today, it covers more than 200 acres of land and others. Before, it was just, when it started, it was just based on a 2-acre land. I had to negotiate and buy this over time, the other lands over time, even for my neighbors and all that. The point was that I just wanted to do something in the beginning, because I thought to myself, if you build a studio, for instance, in a village somewhere, based on the educational background that I have, it means that I can go a long way to inspire 2 people or 3 people, kids, who one day will think like the way I think. And that is success. The moment that we are influencing other people in the world that can also drive change within the world, then I think we're doing something a bit more successful rather than the physical institutions that we're building. And then based on that, I realized that, oh, a lot more people were interested, of course, like parents who come there with their engineers, who come there with their kids and say, oh, I know you're an artist and you're interested in this, and then my child has a talent in drawing, or my child is doing some craft and things at home, or can you help my child to harness that? Before that, no child will be interested in, like, they didn't even want their children to be associated with artists, you know, because their understanding about that was so limited. But for me, because it started from just a basic idea of just building a studio which could have a small impact, naturally it grew into something a lot more bigger. Yeah, and I remember also when I would discuss that with some people and say, oh, I'm building this thing in Tamale. We're like, but why are you building this thing in Tamale? Why you not build it in Accra? In Accra, you get the right audience. The people in Accra, they understand things. Oh, the people in the north, oh, they are not civilized, you know. They barely have food to eat, so you think that they will appreciate this thing. But that's where the whole point was. They missed the point. There's always something that I say that freedom is not necessarily freedom because you have it. Freedom is freedom because you know that you can give it up sometimes, because you know that someone else might not have it, and then you sacrifice yours for the person. And that's where this becomes quite important when we're thinking about these small ideas and things like that. But for you, sometimes what we don't realize is that you might be in a position of privilege. Like, I don't really need to be in the north, but again, I really need to be there. My brother is a neurosurgeon. He studied in Cuba. And when he came back to Ghana, the whole of the north, like 6 million people, there's only one neurosurgeon. And there we have a lot of, because of the poverty, most people go around in motorbikes. So when you go to the hospital, most of the cases there are what? Neurosurgical cases. People are falling off their motorbike, his spine is broken, his leg is broken, things like that. So you ask yourself, how is it that the whole of the northern region, there's only one neurosurgeon? There are other people who would like to do their thing. They don't want to go there because at the end of it, there are no better conditions that are there. So you, as the person, you have to make that decision. My brother, anyway, he has family pressure. He really didn't have any choice. It's family pressure, to be honest. But aside that, I think that also he himself, of course, he could have decided that he wouldn't be there because he could have been in the US or any other place. But at the end of the day, you also realize that the work that you do in a long term, there's going to be an impact of it that will change the foundation of the space that you find yourself in. And wouldn't you want to be part of that history?
I would love to be.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So people miss the point of you going to the north, right? What are some of the challenges that you've encountered? Did you ever cross your mind of giving up?
All the time, even now. All the time. All the time. Yeah, but that's the point. The point is that each time you think about giving up, that's where you find a new reason to even do more. My studio assistant is here, Francis. Each time I say that, oh, right now we've stopped. The next day I'll call him, we'll have this idea, we're going to build this new building. But that's the thing. That's the beauty about it. We don't pack up your bags and run. I always tell myself that when I do one travel out of Ghana, I can visit like 15 countries before I come back home. Within that period that you've gone to all those places, your worldview has expanded significantly. When you come back and you go to the north or whatever, and then you have, let's say, the people there, a lot of them, like we have programs where we bring kids from like the villages, we rent buses, go bring them, we do workshops with them. Even currently we're doing one now. Every day we'll take a bus and bring the kids for workshops. We have to feed them, blah, blah, blah. You realize, you ask yourself that question. You are in a position of privilege. Oh. You go and sit in a plane. It doesn't matter whether you're in economy or whatever. It doesn't matter. You travel around the world. You get to see the world and experience the world in that sense. You are now so free. Even the sacks that I collect from the market, those sacks, sometimes they even have more dignity than the people. Because the artist's hand is like, You know that song, The Midas Touch? When you touch something, you transform it into gold. The idea that you've touched a material that no one will look at, but now suddenly that material will be put into Emirates and then it will go to US, it will go to Australia. But then how many people will even get visas to go to Australia to begin with? So the people who the conditions embody, they are somehow limited to the space that they are in. So those things, and aside that, as for the politics, you don't even want to go into it. So when you go and see, like, you're like, it will surprise you. Let me give you an interesting fact. Do you know that since Red Clay is like how many years old? It's about 8 years. I've been building it for like almost 10 years now. Imagine since it was built 10 years till now, and it's been active at least for 5 years till now. It's very easy for me to pick up the phone and call the German ambassador and say that, oh, Your Excellency, we're doing a program. 2 days, he will take a flight and come. Or he's interested, blah, blah, blah. I've never had my local assemblyman visit the space. I've never had an MP or any of the MPs in the north visit the place. I've never had the Minister for Culture, who was from Tamale himself, never visited the place. So at the end of the day, you ask yourself, if we indeed say that we want to build something, we are part of a difficult system or a society that we want to see it transform, and then the leadership that are within those spaces, like, it's almost as if anything that is significant that can transform the consciousness of our people, it should not work. It's much easier to create a relationship with market women and others, because at the end of the day, these market women, that's what I was talking about, the conditions in the beginning. They are reliant on that thing. You know, they are reliant on the fact that they want their produce to sell. They want this to. But me as an artist, I'm not interested in that regard. Yeah. I'm thinking about higher questions. It's like I'm not thinking about. I don't wake up in the morning thinking that, oh, if I had 200 children, how would I send them to school? I don't think about those things. But once you occupy that part in your life, you have to realize that there are much higher questions. And interestingly enough, that's the irony. Politics occupies that position because collectively, we all give you the power and say that, oh, we give you our billions and whatever, and you make that decision in front of you. You don't have to think about anything. We'll take care of you. Just make sure that you allow us to grow. And that even becomes a problem. So I think that's where sometimes, even anyway, for me, when I'm talking about politics, I'm mostly not talking about it in relation to political parties and things like that. I'm talking about it in relation to the relationship between objects, relationships between ourselves and the ecosystems, relationships in the world. That's why I buy the trains and the planes and all that. The relationship, like what we are having right now. Normally, I'm sure that you wouldn't, in a different timeline, it would be impossible to get an artist to be sitting with you, particularly when, like, mostly you're dealing with like very high figures and things like that. And we are just like in the peripheries and things like that. But that's the beauty about the question that you asked. As difficult and impossible as everything seems to be, that is also what has to motivate us, because we have to realize that we're in a much better place, and even that small place that we have that we might experience crisis, it should allow us to be able to do something that can open up more for other people.
Interesting. But Ibrahim, in your conversations as well, you've mentioned a couple of times around your, like, how you are building your ecosystem. What kind of ecosystems are you looking to build? Now I've seen you've talked a lot around, so the relationships with especially the railways. I get the railways concept. You've looked at the so I see more transportation bits in there. I see a bit of economic as well. What other areas? I know everything. I'm sure as you're even seeing our paintings, there are things that are going through your mind. But what other areas are you looking at, let's say in the next like 3 years to 5 years, in terms of what you are building?
Technological innovation certainly is one of the things that we've been looking at. So, for instance, we're doing this coding workshops and others for quite a while, and we try to be as consistent. So you do them in the studio? Yeah, we do them in the studio and also in the planes, in the parliament, of course, around. But it's also because the institution is filled up with objects which I've collected, which I thought that they had all this poetry embedded within them. So I like to think about technology in a very fluid sense. So both the drones that are now there, like the newer technologies and also older technologies. But certainly the grand plan in the future is somehow to create an independent art school that can also, of course, allow for like independent thinking, things like that, like combining art with engineering, architecture, things like that. So that's why I brought the rail lines, because the rail lines wasn't just for, I'm not looking at the trains just as trains. I'm looking at them as embodiments of history and memory. So the trains are like us. The problem with human beings is that we think that we are the only people that embody memory. And once we die, the memory goes along. No. Our body, interesting enough, we are one of the fragile things because our body will decay. Maybe our bones are the only things that will remain. But then there are so many other objects like metal and any other thing. I remember when we studied in school that in science that you can't destroy matter. You can only transform it from one state to the other. Yeah. Exactly. So a train, even if they melt it, it will become like a piece of iron rod or something like that. It will change. But I'm interested in keeping the memory of the objects in the form that it comes in. So when you find this line, let's say in Tamale or something, it comes with a very different, it comes with that memory together with it. And that's what currently we're working on. The idea of like opening up, expanding that idea of like building like some kind of a space where we can engage a lot more with the kids, because a lot of the work is more or less about how we can transform the way they think through looking at contemporary work and also looking at like technology and any other thing that is associated with it.
Interesting. How many students do you normally get in there coding?
It depends. So sometimes when we're working with the private schools, we work with a particular school and then we need, because you need to work with them for a long time. So for instance, you write a letter to the school and then if you get a permission, some of them you have them for let's say a year and then you work with them because you want to see the changes that happen. But most often also you realize that the difficulty is even communication. Here, like when you go to school and then like English language, like even just the idea of speaking English, there sometimes it's a problem. Like the kids come to the space and then you're talking to them, they don't understand anything that you're saying, but some of them are in JSS. So you even need their teacher to come and you need their teacher to translate, not into English, into Dagbani or something. So at the end of the day, if this child goes to write BAC, you don't expect the child to pass. Because even the thing that they are reading, they don't understand the thing they are reading. So sometimes what we have to do is that we even have to employ English teachers or math teachers to teach them certain subjects before we can even get them into the program or to even talk to them about other things. So we're dealing with all these things on different levels. So that's why for me, I thought that the studio can function in many different forms. So sometimes you come there and then we're doing math classes with the kids. That for me, it's interesting. It's art because my mentor, it's a doctor and a professor and all that, but he went back to school because he was interested in math and he went to do mathematics again at undergrad level and currently even trying to do the masters. So math is always about math is not so much about answers, but it's about questions. Yes, in Ghana, that's when math, they'll beat you so many times because you failed. But it's about questions. Can you raise the right questions? And questions is what drives the world, not so much about answers. You can create a question, and that question will lead to so many discourse in the millennia, rather than, I found the answer, and then we stop. So we're interested in all these different things and what we can do with them. Yeah.
Colleagues in the room, this is Ibrahim Mahama for you. Today, you've challenged us a lot. How we think about innovation, creative thinking. It's in the details, right?
Yes.
It's in the details. We need to take some time and moments to really think through what we do in our everyday life. But I also like something that you talked about is in terms of the crisis. Because most of the time when there are crises or there are problems, we can find 1,001 reasons why it won't work and who to blame. But I think for me, one of the things you have reinforced is the fact that there's value in everyday things that are around us. And you don't need money to make a big difference. You can start from wherever you are. So thank you all. It's been a very good one. And you are the first for our next wave, which has been very, very good. So we look forward to you coming sometime. And we might end up in Tamale. You never know.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Maybe in the Red Clay studio. That's where we're going to have this session. It's possible.
Yeah.
So, so thank you very much, Ibrahim, and we really appreciate your time.
Old Mutual, do great things every day.